One of these forecasters is sitting in the secret square, and the contestant who picks him first could win a prize package watching him throwing in the towel. Which forecaster is it? Well, before we let you know which forecaster it is, we must tell you that the Joe and Joe Weather Show tonight with our two very, very so special guests, Bill Goodman from NWS Upton and Anthony Gigi, or Tony Gigi, retired forecaster from NWS Mount Holly. The Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, your superstore for everything you need, not just on Long Island, but anywhere in the tri-state area to get your house cleaned up outside this winter when we have snow and ice, because they've got salt, they've got sand, they've got snow blowers, good-looking snow blowers too, with 24, 30-inch wide blades, spreaders, Pelledo, Mag Ice Pellets and Flakes, all the great snow melting products, and of course, more rock salt than even the People's Republic of the state of New Jersey can handle under a state of emergency. So head over to Omni True Value Hardware, 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. 631-756-1125 is the phone number. And Joe Rayo, the website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
Yes, it certainly is. So we're gonna have fun tonight. Bill Goodman on my left. We got the Brady Bunch boxes up. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna move. Hold on. Let me risk this. I think I'm gonna move Tony Gigi up to the top. So this way our guests are sitting on the top row. So we've got Tony Gigi on the right, on the upper right. We've got Bill Goodman on the left, and we have our Joe Rayo, who is on the lower right, and I'm Joe Chaffee, and I'm on the lower left. And also guest appearing tonight in the center square is none other than. Are you ready, Joe? Are you ready to find out who it is?
Yes, I'm ready.
Oh, good. I'm glad you are, because now she's disappeared. Oh, come on. Seriously, where are you? You know, I try to do something.
Brittany Bohr.
No, she doesn't want to appear. There she is. No. Carol Merrill standing before us with a silver tea set from the Michael C. Fina Company from the old days of Let's Make a Deal. So we'll get rid of.
Yes.
So let's say goodbye to Carol and let's get serious around here. I want to say, by the way,
at least it's not Mrs. Bundy. I thought it was going to be Mrs. Bundy.
Mrs. Bundy's lurking around somewhere, so don't knock her. She's no. she could appear at any moment. Just want to say a big welcome to all of you who are watching. That's joining us from Tri-State Weather tonight, the home of Adam Toskin and Adam Toxin, and the plate of meatballs that comes out whenever we have these situations. So, okay, I've talked enough. I talked enough. We want never to be humble opinions here. So let's start with Tony Gigi, who resides in the Tornado Alley of New Jersey. Is that not correct?
Yeah. Well, wait. I got a tap to speak. Can you hear me?
I hear you. I hear you, but we lost you there. Okay. Now you're there. Okay.
Oh, there I am. Yeah, I'm back in the secret square. Yes. So how am I beginning? Since I technologically slowed the whole works down.
That's right. Well, I'm just wondering, actually, one of the things that came across my mind today was the fact that, I just want to comment before we get into this particular storm. I mean, we had a really active severe weather and late severe weather system with the storms we had in November and into December. And, I'm just kind of wanting your opinion here with regards to those tornadoes that happened in South Jersey back a couple of months ago. I don't know, were they unprecedented for this time of year? Because I know you've done some, little research on that end.
Well, with the types of tornadoes that with respect to tropical systems, I mean, usually you get like EF zeros or EF ones. I mean, these were Midwestern type tornadoes. I mean, it's almost as if like everything is a level higher now
Right.
than the way it was. So, I mean, in terms of like, I mean, if it's unprecedented, I mean, we always had that November 1989 event that had like a whole slew of tornadoes, and and that I'm not really 100% sure if that's still like the record number for one day in New Jersey, but it just seems like like the ante just keeps on getting lifted or raised every year we go along.
Oh, well, yeah, it does seem that way, and certainly with Long Island, Bill, we had the tornadoes in December. Who would have thought that would have happened? And well, anyway, I just wanted to just briefly touch on that. So, folks on the chat board are going to be putting up some questions. So as they come along, John Curry just hit the super chat tip jar, John. So I'm going to get your question in a little bit. I'll put it out there for you guys, and you can just kind of hold on to this for a little later. He wants somebody to explain deformation bands that's set up on the models and how do you find them. So when we get to that point, we'll bring up a couple of the models. And we'll go from there. Joe Rayo, start the ball rolling with some questions, will you?
You mean off of the chat board, or just to
No,
throw out to
just
the general public?
Just in general about what's going on.
Well, as we've been seeing over the last few days, the operational models have been taking this, and I assume this is what everybody is anxious to see, the system that's coming our way for the end of the weekend and the start of next week. Initially, this thing looked like it was going to be offshore and that we were going to easily see, snow straight through. And now with each passing run, the operational models have been pushing this more and more to the west. Meanwhile, the ensembles have been keeping this more to the east, and trying to figure out, which to put greater weight on. And right now, I think a lot of the forecasters are saying, okay, we'll do a compromise of sorts. We'll say snow and then maybe mixing with some ice, sleet, maybe even changing over to rain. Better chance of that if the operational is correct. Not as good a chance if it goes toward the ensemble. But really, I think the most important thing to point out here is that this particular system is still out over the Pacific Ocean. At least the energy that we are basing this on is out over the Pacific. And it won't be until later tomorrow night, as it begins to come onshore somewhere around Washington or Oregon, the Pacific Northwest, where a lot more data sets are going to be available to throw into the supercomputers. It's not going to be until late tomorrow night that we're going to start seeing, I think, more of a closure between the models, both in terms of the ensemble and the operational. And hopefully by Friday, and I would hope by the start of the weekend, we'll have a pretty good idea, good handle as to where this stupid thing is going to be going. Because right now it is just utter confusion, and trying to figure out, whether or not it's going to be to the west of us or to the east of us or going right over us. That's still, I don't mean this, it's up in the air. Let's put it that way. And until we get more of that data set into the equations here, and the algorithms, again, starting later tomorrow and into Friday, I think it's all bets are off as to where this thing is going to go.
Bill, I want you to comment on what Joe said, and I'm putting up on the screen WPCs. This is in their long range. So this is for Sunday into Monday. The probability of exceeding 1/4 of an inch of liquid equivalent of snow and sleet. So I basically call it the 2 to 3 inch snow map, 2 to 3 inch plus snow map. And in their mid-range discussion, because I've been struggling with the fact that they have been over the last several days really being aggressive with the snowfall forecast in the long range. Not that it's not justified, because there is a storm coming, and I get that, but particularly high with the numbers near the coast. Now, on this new one, I almost fell out of my chair when I saw this, because this was issued this afternoon at this morning, but probably around noontime. So I don't know, maybe they got to peek at some of the guides. They certainly saw the overnight stuff, but they've got a 50 to 70% chance of at least 3 just north and west of the turnpike in New Jersey. Okay. Western Connecticut, the Hudson, northern Westchester northward, a 50 to 70% chance. They've got the 30 to 50% chance covering everybody but eastern Long Island, all of Connecticut, all of Rhode Island to Massachusetts, most of New Jersey, west of the turnpike. And then, of course, they've got the 70 to 90% chance in Western Virginia, Western North Carolina, and they even have 30 to 50 down to me in Northeast Georgia, where, by the way, the European gives me, for the umpteenth run in a row, between 13 and 15 inches up here at 2,000 feet in Northeast Georgia. So I'm curious as to what you think of this whole, the ensembles being where they are, the operationals being as far west as they are now, away from the ensembles, and let's put on top of that the fact that WPC, in their discussion, they're saying that they're doing this because they're respecting the ensembles. I mean, where do we fall on this in this case?
Well, I'm going to disrespect the ensembles a little bit and say how often are they too far south and east compared to the operational, and how often, when that happens, do we end up going more toward what the operational has to say? It happens time and time again. I can't, to just blindly respect the ensembles like they're saying. I think that's kind of silly. Especially with the synoptic pattern being what it is. I'm just having a hard time seeing how this thing is gonna pass that far east, that areas like where I'm sitting here on Long Island are going to see 3 inches of snow.
Right.
Unless a really good front end thump. With this
you and I had this conversation the other day. I'm putting up the GFS 500. You're arguing, and I think rightfully so, that when you look at the what's going on in southern Greenland and point southward, where you have the Atlantic Ridge pushing northward, it was all fine and dandy a few days ago because that ridge was actually building into the Davis Strait and into Greenland and building westward. And then when we saw the GFS do that, that 135-degree move from going out east-northeast to west-northwest in terms of the positions, on 3 runs in a row, you move the storm from being well offshore to well inland. It's because of the fact that ridging, that attempt to kind of push some ridging and blocking into the Davis Strait in northeastern Canada is being eroded by this first ocean storm that's developing tomorrow and running up into Nova Scotia and Newfoundland.
Yeah, and even where that's going, I think, is trended farther east. The upper high that you'd like to see over Greenland or the Davis Strait, now that's being modeled to be east of Greenland. That's just not in a good spot, at least for the coast to see heavy snow.
Right. Tony, what do you think on this whole ensemble operational controversy?
If you could get Mark DeLisi on here, he always used to get on his soapbox about, like, why are you using a poorer resolution model to decide, meet the deciding factor in all of this. The only thing I will say, in terms of like that percentage, I mean, there's the thought of like you mentioned it, Joe, about the front end dump, that maybe if it comes in sooner, faster, harder, and somehow it doesn't warm above 850 millibars too quickly, then you can get to that, like, kind of that low end. I mean, you get into that, that greater than quarter of an inch water equivalent, but you're just getting there. You're not like, that you're leaving that in the dust behind.
Right. And by the way, I'll bring up the 850 because I did notice this. The 850, even though the low level, if you look at the low level 2 meter temperatures on the models, on the GFS in particular, the 32-degree line is at New York City by 7 p.m. on Sunday, and then by 1 a.m., it's already, pretty far to the north. The 850 actually is pretty cold, and it takes a long time for the zero to push up. I'm going to put it on the screen here, and then I'm going to throw my 2 cents in on the ensembles, by the way. But here is this is Saturday evening. And the thing is, we're going to it's going to get very cold here Friday night into Saturday night, early Sunday morning. You're going to have all this cold air coming down on this almost ideal northerly flow from Labrador down to, through New England, and just funneling all the way down into the southeastern states. The 850 at 0Z Monday, the 850, you guys, at 0Z Monday is still south of Cape, the zero is still south of Cape May. Okay, and the zero, it moves like a rocket ship. By 1 a.m., the zero is up to about New York City. So as far as the front end thump is concerned, Tony, you're right. If it comes in faster, if it comes in, pushes in while the 850 is cold enough, and you can, kind of counterbalance whatever the ocean wind is doing with the way the high is going out the way it is. That's the one way that you could put it down on that's the way you put it down on the front end thumb. On the ensembles, I am with both of you, Bill, and I'm with you, Anthony. I agree. To me, my problem with the ensembles is, if you're going to take 16 members or 20 members or however many members you have, you can pretty much cherry pick whichever one you want that makes you to satisfy your inner weenie. Okay, but at the end of the day, if you're taking all those members and basically just averaging out, taking them and just averaging them out to a mean position, well, you know what? If you use averages, you're going to get average results. And the thing I find, and Joe Rayo, maybe you could want to comment on this. The thing to me, because I've been getting people arguing with me saying, "Oh, the ensembles, the ensembles, the ensembles." Okay, if one of the operational run, I would feel better about the idea of something being too far west if one of the global models of the four, okay, of the European, the GFS, the Canadian, and the Icon. We'll throw the Icon in there just because there's 4 of us, so each of us get to own a model, okay? Of those 4 models, if one of them was showing an eastward track, I would say, okay, you know what? The door is still open. None of them are. They're all inland, and they're not just barely inland. They're like on the Jersey, Pennsylvania border westward. So what are you going to do with that? How can you, how can you fight that? That's the thing. That's my point here. And I don't, the ensembles, to me, I look at them, but they don't do it for me as far as trying to make a final forecast.
Regardless of where the 850 ends up, ultimately, the 4 of us know that the bottom layer, I mean, right down by the surface, that cold air, you're going to need a crowbar to scour that bit of cold air out. And what I'm looking at, or what I'm thinking, is that there will be, some front end snow, but even after the 850 goes to our north, after the zero line, and I don't give a damn if sorry to use that language, I don't care if it gets all the way up to Poughkeepsie or even Albany. The bottom line of it is that I think we may be looking at a protracted spell of sleet and ice before we fully change over to a cold rain or a plain rain. So that's going to be the last thing I want to see, and I have a long driveway. I have a snowblower, but a long driveway. The last thing I want to see is 2, 3, 4 inches of snow, and then have on top of that ice, sleet, slush, and then plain rain. That's going to be almost next to impossible to try to clear away. But that's what I'm thinking of right now, guys. Unless this storm goes way to the west. I saw the GFS at 12Z, I think, placed the storm center at one point near Williamsport.
Yes.
That's pretty far to the west. But still, the thing that really concerns me is how long that shallow layer of cold air down by the surface is just going to hang in, probably for a good part of the upcoming storm, and maybe not finally lift out or get scoured away until the last few hours. But by that time, the damage will have been done, and it'll be too late.
By the way, I do have the ensembles up on, they should be up on the screen momentarily. I do have the latest GFS ensembles, and you can see where the mean position is, which is just east of the southern tip of the Delmarva Peninsula, and then the mean position is southeast of Atlantic City by, you know, if I'll just figure it out on the putting the mouse over here, 39.5 and about 72.8. And it looks like half the members are out to the east and half the members are out to the west. I don't find that useful. I just don't find that useful as a forecast tool. And by the way, Joe, on your point, I think, you know, one of the things to look at on Sunday is going to be the wind direction, because, you know, if you can hold on to the wind, if it's 04 or maybe even 05, you know, you might be able to hold on to cold air longer. But if you start seeing winds, because of the low being so far inland, if the winds are going to start being 08, 09, 100, you know, that's going to make the low levels warm up a lot faster. So you got to, that's the one thing, you know, I would kind of argue against the idea of a protracted period of sleet. Not that it can't happen. I'm just saying that if the wind direction is, you know, starts to bend down more to the east or even east-southeast, I think you're going to warm up a lot faster than what the models are showing, and that air is going to get scoured out a lot faster than you think.
Well, we'll see. And somebody asked about looking at the F-Gen or the Omega at 700, and from what I could see, it looks almost like a
hold on,
front.
one Omega coming up. Hold on, let's one Omega with the side of it with 2 eggs and a biscuit. Hang on, Adam and Eve on a raft. Wreck them.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get his Omega up. Which one do you want, the 850 or the 7?
The 700. No, the 700.
Okay, I got the 700 GFS Omega. It'll be served momentarily. Is there anything else I can help you with?
No, at the moment.
A glass of warm milk, perhaps.
And I might point out that when you look at the 700 millibar F-Gen map, you can see where the zero line is at 700. And the zero line at 700 as of 6Z is just moving through northern Westchester and on up into Putnam. But what I said a few moments ago, the way the configuration of the Omega is on the F-Gen, it looks like it's almost like a warm front. It looks like this warm front is going to go marching through the tri-state area sometime around 11 o'clock, midnight, 1 a.m. Monday morning, and then lift away to the north and east. And I don't know how much, you know, if you're basing a lot of the, you know, heavy duty or intense precip solely on the bands of Omega on the F-Gen, it pretty well is going to wind down after, and again, you take this at face value, after about 1, 2 in the morning, the heaviest stuff is all but done, and now we just have some lingering or leftover moisture. Who knows? It may be a front end type system where we get a lot of snow maybe at the beginning, and then just as it's changing over, it kind of diminishes a bit to sleet or rain in the after midnight hours. And again, you know, guys, as I said just 5 or 10 minutes ago, we're ruminating over something that I think within 48 hours is going to change dramatically once we get all of that new data in from the Pacific, the new swath of data sets moving in over the Pacific Northwest and feeding that in. I think what we're looking at now is going to be totally different in 1 or 2 days. Or as Isaac Asimov said, as I said before in one of his famous short stories, The Last Question, there is as of yet insufficient data for a meaningful answer. And right now, nothing is meaningful.
By the way, I'm going
to throw in 2 cents here and point out that
go ahead,
we've been doing some recon in the North Pacific for this system, and as soon as we started doing that, that's really when the models settled into this particular solution that we have with the at least the operational models taking a more westerly track. Before that, they were all over the place. One run, the GFS would be suppressed and the Euro would be giving us a big snowstorm. The next one, it would be the exact opposite. As soon as that recon got into the NWP guidance, things really settled down.
Bill, do you think that when we have the the additional information from the Pacific Northwest over the next 24 to 48 hours, we may end up seeing even more of a turn to the west or west northwest on the operationals?
I don't know. I think that turn of the west probably has more to do with what's going on up downstream in the North Atlantic than it does with what's happening in the Pacific. But this is sort of just gauging the strength of the shortwave that's coming at us in the first place.
Could we not also argue, by the way, that if the got the Recon data there, maybe the additional data when it's finally getting sampled is not going to make much of a difference? I mean, the models have already played their hand. And I by the way, I would agree also on the idea that this is more about what's going on in the North Atlantic, really, than what's going on out in the West. Not that the West isn't important, obviously it is, but I think the whole setup in the North Atlantic, going from what it was to what it is now, is problematic. And Joe, to your point, with respect to the Omega, I still have the map up. That Omega comes through between 0 and 6Z. I mean, I guess that's your front end thump. If it's going to happen,
right?
It's going to happen in
right.
that. So it's going to be a question of making of whether the low levels, as all the levels are going to be intact before we start to lose them from the bottom up. But yeah, this would be a quick shot, maybe 3 or 4 hours it goes through. Maybe somebody winds up with several inches or more. I just don't know about some of the bigger numbers that are being thrown out by the European and the GFS and a few others. I don't know. I'm just not overly confident that those numbers are going to verify north and west of the turnpike. I think just they might be a little bit too high.
Joe, are you talking about the operationals or like some of the ensemble members?
No, I'm talking about the
the actual operational.
Yeah, I'm talking about the operational now. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll bring up the surface. So, I was thinking, one of the things I was thinking over the last few days, I was talking with Alan Casper about this, and we were just sort of, Joe, and I mentioned it with you, Joe, yesterday on the show. It's not often that you get a low that drops down, basically from Montana down into the lower Gulf states, makes the turn. You get a low at Charleston, a low at Hatteras, and then all of a sudden the low goes almost northwest into northern Virginia, up on the latest run on the 18Z run to Harrisburg, and then up into northern Vermont. I mean, that don't happen too often. But on the other hand, you can see how the high just goes out. It just goes out. It unlike a few days ago when you had the high basically stuck in Quebec and not going anywhere, and this trying to lift up and pressing against it, it's gone. Again, Bill, I think you're right. I think it's really more about what's going on in the North Atlantic than it is, with the actual system coming in from the Pacific side.
Yeah, I think you're right. We said this. We were talking about this yesterday or the day before. That another problem to include here is where that first system, the one off the Mid-Atlantic coast. And P.S. Let me remind a lot of our viewers that only a few days ago, a lot of us were. Well, I don't know about me, and I don't know about you, Joe, but there's some who were worried about whether or not we would get something out of that because it was placed relatively close to the coast. Now it's a little bit further out to sea. But now the intensity of the system, whether or not the models a day or two ago were underplaying it, because the more intense it gets, the stronger that northwesterly flow aloft gets. And that, again, plays into what happens to the next system downstream and where that system is going to go, whether or not it's going to go up along the coast or whether or not it's going to be inland or whether or not it's going to be out to sea. So many different things to consider, and a lot of it to consider over the next 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours. So we'll see how this all goes.
By the way, for those that might be watching across northern Alabama, northern Georgia, to South Carolina, two things to watch for now. The GFS is the warmer of the models here than the European. The European has actually got this whole feature further south. The Europeans' idea is that the big high to the north and the cold air draining southward in what is referred to as the wedge, when you have the cold air banked up against the mountains in western North Carolina, and that cold air just funnels down. The European being the colder model, showing. Well, the GFS does show some heavy snows in western North Carolina, but the Europeans got some heavy snows extending down into North Georgia. It's really going to be all about the upper low for the southern folks. What we're going to watch the track. I'm going to bring up the upper air here. Usually, when it snows in the deep south like this, and you get situations where somebody winds up with a big surprise, and I think there will be some places that will get a bit of a big surprise out of this, is the track of the upper low, which is stubbornly not wanting to load on the map, but we'll try and get it to cooperate here. But north and west of where the upper low tracks, and it's right here. This is Sunday morning. It's sitting in right on the Alabama-Tennessee line. So it's the area. Two things are going to happen. There's going to be snow and sleet and some freezing rain thanks to the wedging of the cold air down the Appalachians, and then you're going to have the upper low move east, and that's going to cool the low and mid levels, and you're going to wind up with some areas are going to change over to a short period of what could be heavy wet snow. So if the track of the upper low is across, say, central Alabama, central Georgia, north of that is where you're going to wind up seeing a band of, there's probably going to be some heavy snows. I wouldn't be surprised if, I think that the European numbers are kind of high, but if we cut them in half, it certainly says that elevations from, say, up to 2,000, 1,000 to 2,000 feet could wind up with several to maybe 6 inches in some places, and you go above 2,000 or 3,000 feet, and you're talking 6 to 10 or more, maybe even a foot or more, which, by the way, has already happened down here in a couple of the events that we've had in the last couple of weeks. So it's very nice, guys, when it snows down here, because I have mountains that go up about 4,000 or 5,000 feet, so I can see they're snow covered at the top, and where I am at about 2,000 feet, I had 1.5 inches back, whatever it was, about a week and a half or so ago. So when you look up at the mountains, it really does look quite nice to see all that snow near the top, and you're right at the place where once the sun gets high enough in the sky, it just starts to melt fairly quickly. I know that's got to make Tony Gigi happy. You're not the biggest snow fan in the world, Anthony, right?
Oh, I'm Switzerland now. I'm retired. I don't care. It snows. It don't. It's
right.
I just like that the fact that it's January and it's snowing in January. These late more snows or whatever. And by then I'm on to spring. Let winter be winter and winter.
Right, exactly. For a change, unlike December, right? It's actually snowing in a month where it's supposed to be snowing, and it's actually cold in a month that's supposed to be snowing. Let me just acknowledge just a couple of people here. Barry Goldberg hitting the super chat tip jar tonight. We also have Jason Kaplan, Lou Garu, and there was one other person from earlier that I did not get a chance to say thank you to. Hopefully
John
I can.
Curry?
John Curry. Okay, if I did, you get thanks twice. So thank you, those of you who have hit the super chat tip jar tonight. Most appreciated. 124 likes, which is great. Joe and I love to go over 100, but we love it even more if we go over 200. So if you like the show, hit the like button. If you're new to my YouTube channel, welcome. You can subscribe with your Gmail account, and this way you'll get notifications every time the Joe and Joe Weather Show is on, which is usually 5 days a week, 4 weeknights, Monday through Thursday, and Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And if we're on Friday and Saturday, it means that there is a storm brewing somewhere. So, Tony, let's talk a little long. Let's talk a little long range.
Yes.
I'm curious as to your opinion regarding the long range broad pattern for, if you want to speculate for the second half of the month of January, or maybe poke your head into the month of February, you have the floor. I have the GFS 500 up to accompany you if you'd like.
Well, you can put up anything. I don't think it matters. I mean, it's cold.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just, no, I don't even mean because it's January cold. I mean, it's colder than normal. I mean, it's all the ensembles, because I was taking a look at them, this afternoon, and it's just like the angle of the cold. Like, I mean, the GFS or the Jeffs is like, a little bit farther east, but the Canadian ensembles and the European ensembles, they're all cold, the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, is forecast to be negative. The PNA is forecast to be positive. You don't get warm like that, because we had the flip, especially with the PNA, throughout the whole month of December. And I honestly don't see anything, to upset this apple cart. I mean, the MJO doesn't look like it's that active, and if it does get active, it looks like it actually favors colder phases. So I would say that, the second half of this month looks colder than normal, and that's maybe I may be understating it, as far as February goes, I don't know, no patterns last forever. Things start to get, long in the tooth, I guess, as long as there isn't a sudden stratospheric warming event. Maybe things will change in February, but I don't see how the second half of January is going to be anything but cold.
Hey, Joe, can you
yeah.
Can you give me sharing capabilities, because somebody on the chat board, I think it was Timothy Veltman, said that he thinks this particular storm coming up, is going to be very similar to one that occurred in 2000. And I have those maps. I went to the
I'll do
library
that,
and I got.
I'll do that, but give me just a second here, because I sometimes when we've got a lot going on here on the computer, when I try to do the sharing, we wind up with a lot of audio issues. So let me just minimize a couple of things. You've got sharing capability, and by the way, on the screen before I switch, just real quick, Tony, just going back to what you said, I pulled up, the GFS has been kind of telegraphing after day 10 for a very, very deep trough in the east and a lot of cold coming in, and it seems to be there run after run after run. So I think you're onto something with regards to what the pattern is going to hold through for the rest of the month. So, okay, so now go ahead, Joe. You can go ahead and share. Let's hope that everything goes okay.
Well, Tim Veltman calls this the Carolina Crusher, and says that he thinks that this pattern from January 24, 25, 26, 2000 is quite similar to what we're going to be looking at over this upcoming weekend. Now, this is for January 24th. Notice, first of all, the low is down here over northern Florida, and I think we can all agree that the upcoming scenario does not have, either in the ensemble or the operational, any storm system going that far south and east. The upper low looks somewhat similar. It's actually not really an upper low, but it's more like a short wave over the lower and mid Mississippi Valley. But this was January 24th. Now, since Tim Veltman is calling it the Carolina Crusher, I'm going to make the assumption that this gave the Carolinas a whole heck of a lot of snow. As we move to the 25th of the year 2000, Tuesday, January 25th, we have a low that's off of the outer banks of North Carolina. Where's the upper low? Now we have a closed low that has gone negative right over eastern North Carolina. And this is a 984, 983 millibar low. And you can see like most of the precipitation is over the coastal plain. I mean, it does not look like any precipitation of significance is falling over western or central Pennsylvania or western and central sections of Virginia. And that's in contrast to what Joe mentioned at the start of the show, where in this particular case, the folks over at WPC are calling for huge precipitation probabilities over western North Carolina, over western Virginia and West Virginia. This does not do that. And on the 26th, we see that the storm has now moved up into, looks like New Brunswick or down East Maine, and the actual upper system looks like it's negatively tilted, but it's still like pointing toward the Carolinas. I presume this little hump here or bump here is the actual reflection of the surface system. So I really, Tim, if you're watching, I really don't. I understand what you're saying, but this really doesn't look like I think what we're looking at for this upcoming weekend. What do you guys think?
I think the notable difference is the fact that the upper low when it comes out of the south and lifts up. Okay, if you follow the GFS, that northern stream system comes down and does almost a full phase with it and pulls the upper low pretty far to the left. I think that's the difference here, because the upper feature here kind of stays separate from the trough that's coming down from the northern stream. I think that would make a huge difference in our situation now if you could keep that separate and track the upper low, say right down along the coast or just offshore, but the upper low's going so far left. And that's another thing, guys, maybe you can address this, because this was bothering me over the last couple of days when it made this shift left, was the fact that, that I can remember, I was trying to rack my brains out trying to figure out an instance where the upper low was actually south and east of where the surface low was. In this case, that's what we had on a few of the runs and we might still have it on a couple of the models, where the upper low is actually south and east of where the actual surface low is. I couldn't, I'm trying to rack my brains out figuring out when I've ever seen that before.
Yeah, that's a little weird, unless it gets so wound up before it occludes that I don't know that that's going to happen.
I mean, is it that northern feature that's maybe doing that, where you do have, there are signs on the GFS that there's an occluded low up in Tennessee when you've got the southern low that's reforming down into South Carolina. I don't know. That was something that kind of bothered me when I saw it all that. So that just looked very strange to me. Anthony, you have any thoughts on that?
Well, no. But going back to what Joe was saying, I don't know if Bill remembers, but that.
Oh yeah, I remember this one. Yeah,
that storm was the pronouncement, the no surprise weather service storm.
Oh yeah,
because that one actually, the irony of all of that, the first model to actually show that, because how things, I don't know what I had for dinner an hour ago, but I was working midnight shifts with that, and the one model that showed that was the NGM, and that's how and all the other models were actually farther offshore. And I actually, when we're talking about, it looked like that better maybe like a day or two ago versus like this big shift that just happened in the modeling.
Right.
But I went back and I looked at our zone forecasts for that event, and we went from, and that was my midnight shift with the bold 30% chance of snow. The day shift changed that to light snow likely. The evening shift put up a winter storm warning.
Oh yeah, I remember they scrambled. They scrambled to get it on the 10 o'clock news. Yeah.
That's how much that changed in 24 hours.
I've always, not to rub it in, because all of us have been, have sat in the chair with that pit in your stomach when something like that happens. But it's the worst feeling in the world when you have to catch up when you have to do it off the seat of your pants, and you're constantly playing catch up and you can't catch. There's a funny story Tom Morgan used to tell about. I don't know, Tony, if you remember, if he told this, when you were around at the Weather Service, but he used to tell this story about how the record all-time high for the month of May is actually 101 in Central Park, but in the record books it's at 99. And the reason why was when the forecaster that was on in the day shift that morning he started with the forecast of a high of 65 to 70, and had to just and had to keep up, and he had to keep updating. And he had to keep updating 60, 70 to 75, 75, and on and on. Then it got to 95 to 100. And when he went over 100, when the actual temperature went to 100, over 100 to 101, that the forecaster went into the radar room where the observer sat and grabbed the guy and said, "Put down 99. You're not putting down 101. 99." I thought that was one of the funnier stories about having to play catch up in a forecast. It's almost as bad as when you do you've already done your shift, you put your forecast, and then you wake up the next morning and you realize whatever, especially when it comes to snow, that it didn't materialize. That is that's the absolute worst,
Oh yeah, I know the one storm, the Joe Harrison, the late February storm that buried Atlantic City, and I think it may have snowed at JFK. It didn't get to New York City. Joe Harrison, who put out that forecast, and and even back then, I think they shut everything down, and he never got over that reverse bust where he was forecasting like 6 to 12 inches of snow and nothing happened. It bothered him till he retired.
Joe
Harrison was great. I loved him. He was a great guy.
I was going to say Joe Harrison was the one who wrote, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, he wrote the script for the blizzard of 78, the February 78 storm.
Yes.
And after he finished it, he handed it off to a young intern, an up-and-coming meteorologist, and said, "Here, go on KWO35 and read this."
Gee, I wonder who that was.
Now, who might that be?
Who might that be? I don't know. Who might that be? It might be me.
And another up-and-coming meteorologist listening at home on his weather radio, hearing that young voice from 30 Rockefeller Plaza, jumping up and down, doing high fives, air high five time. What the? I mean, when you have lived most of your life and have always heard you talk about upping, I lived in a time when the Weather Service would go 2 to 4 inches, and then they would up it to 4 to 6, and then they would up it to 6 to 8. They never ever in those days actually went for a foot or more. They never did. And that, correct me if I'm wrong, that was the first time I ever heard a forecast for a foot or more of snow. But the thing that really got me excited was when Mr. Chiaffi said, if it reaches just part of its potential, it should easily match the storm of January 20th. And that was the surprise snowstorm, the one that was supposed to change to rain.
Mm-hmm.
That storm gave us like 15 or 18 inches. And here Chiaffi is saying, if it just lives up to part of its potential, it'll match that storm. And I'm going, whoa. And that was written again by Joe Harrison. So Joe has nothing to be ashamed of. That was a great forecast.
Same here. I was listening to all that too. That's why I'm sitting here having this conversation with all of you.
See what you started, Joe? You inspired all of us with that reading that forecast.
Yeah, that was a pretty exciting, that was a pretty exciting moment for a 19-year-old. I will tell you that. Yeah, it was quite cool. I think you still have, Joe. You've got the tape of that somewhere.
Somewhere in my archives, I have that tape. And if I ever find it, I'll start playing it again, and I'll play it here on Joe and Joe.
Yeah, but I had come
across it.
My voice wasn't as deep as it is now, and also I had a very, very obvious New York accent.
You know what I wish I had, Joe, and I don't, is the night that they threw you onto the fire, threw you onto the fire, the frying pan. It was the night when they fired Bob Harris at CBS. And they were suddenly without any weather coverage. They called the Weather Service, I guess, and they said, "Hey, Joe, you talk to CBS," and you were doing the weather on WCBS
Was it
News
really?
Radio 88.
I did that. It might have been. It might have been the one and only time. I don't remember that.
I remember it very well. I said to myself, "Oh my God, it's Joe Chiaffi."
James H. hitting the super chat tip jar. Thank you very much, James. Most appreciated. 27 likes to go to 200, please. Joe and I would love to see 200 likes. And as just mentioned again, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Subscribe to my YouTube channel using your Gmail account so you can watch the Joe and Joe Weather Show at least 5 days a week. And by the way, when I said at the beginning of the show about one of these forecasters sitting in the secret square, and I'm the one who's throwing in the towel. I got my towel and I'm throwing it because I'm just, I am thinking, I'm thinking the operationals are correct. I'm thinking there might be a front end dump, but it's going to be north and west of 95. I can't see it for Long Island. I just, unless it snows for half an hour. I think, Bill, you're on the same page with me with that. I think it's nice to have.
Yeah, we'll see if it comes in faster. We might get a couple of inches here. Can't rule that out. Just too early to tell.
Oh Lord! Oh, by the way,
Well,
go ahead, Tony. I'm sorry.
This is different. This is different, Joe. I'm not throwing in the towel. Of course, I don't know. I'm not saying like 6 to 12 or 12 to 18 or something. But days, got a couple of days to go, and it's been a weird winter. Where back in other winters, it seems like when systems go northwest, they stay northwest. But this, things have been kind of bouncy all over the place. So. And again, I'm not saying that, ensemble members east is like what, where I feel it's going to be, but, maybe it'll end up coming closer to coast or come faster and you get more in the front end. So I don't know. I don't know what exactly you're throwing in the towel is. Maybe for Long Island, that part. All
right. Well, as far as throwing in the towel, this is
right,
and this is our world that we live in now, essentially, with social media and everything else. The conversation about this particular storm began days ago, and of course, it is already, whenever something like that appears many days beforehand, it's immediately taken to its Armageddon conclusion. So you had I have a headache, therefore it must be a brain tumor type approach. And you have all this social media stuff and all these posts. People messaging me saying, I'm hearing, I love this. I'm hearing rumors that there might be a storm at the end of the week. And I'm thinking, like, what gossip rooms do you hang out with? Do you sit in bars, drinking beer, sitting around with your guy friends, talking about weather models and gossiping about the GFS and the European? And it's like, for God's sake, it's weather. But, one of the things, that I find difficult, I know Joe Rayo finds this difficult, unless you disagree with me, Joe, it's very hard to shut this stuff off. And that's the thing that really...
That's impossible.
Yeah.
It's very... Yeah,
I know.
I have tried. I've actually had some success. I used to follow a lot of different weather people just for the sake of following them. I've taken most of them off because... it's too much noise. And my approach has always been, I got to look at my stuff in a closed environment. I can't be polluted by all outside information getting in and putting doubts in my head with regards to what I'm forecasting. So I guess from the standpoint of thinking about throwing in the towel is the fact that this was being paraded as some, awesome blizzard that was going to occur across the mid-Atlantic states in the Northeast, and it's not going to happen that way. It just isn't. Are there going to be places that are going to maybe wind up with a foot? Sure. Are they going to be in the mountains somewhere in the Poconos and up in the Catskills? Probably. I mean, it changes to rain all the way up to I-90 in Albany and into central New England if the models are correct. That's
Joey, it almost seems like. Oh, okay, now I get you what you're coming from, because it all, like it's almost like in the Philly local area, just following it almost made like this tremendous shift. And it's probably like, it may have been actually like the run, Bill, where you were talking about where the drop sounds were put in the Pacific. It's like we were like too far south and east. Then all of a sudden we were too west. We never really had like a sweet spot, like computer run that I think that maybe it was an 18Z run or a 6Z run I missed.
There were two
actually getting buried.
Yeah, no, there were two runs. So in this particular instance, there was two runs. So we had that run. It was an 18Z run. I forgot what day it was this week, where the low was going out east northeast, nothing close. The 0Z, the very next run, the 0Z run was a sweet spot run. The 6Z run was a sweet spot run, but it was also to the left. It started that move to the, made a significant move to the left where it was almost, you could look at it and say, you know what, it's close to being a coast hugger. And you kind of looked at it and said, this is where maybe the coast is at risk. And then all of a sudden you got, so suddenly it's at Harrisburg going to Albany. It's sort of, what it reminded me of? It reminded me of, I remember just go back a few years ago with her, I think it was Hurricane Irma, where in the long range, it started off. Oh, great. Thank you. It started off on the long range where it went, it showed it going up to Iceland. Then it showed it up to going to Greenland. Then it showed it in Nova Scotia. Then it showed it in, coming into the Jersey coast. And, then it showed it going into the Carolinas. And it wound up going, almost straight west, south of 20 degrees north, all the way across. It sort of reminded me about how the models handle the tropical systems, where you get this sort of wide variation and it's nowhere close to reality. This was very frustrating to see that jump the way it was. And when you have all that outside noise going on at the same time, as a forecaster, it's like, I can't work that way. I just can't. I shut it off. And of course, everybody comes at me because, and Joe Drayo knows this. Maybe you guys get it too, or did get it, Tony, because you're retired. Don't you love forecast shoppers? I mean, I love forecast. I love people who go forecast shopping. It's, you put out your forecast and then they say, well, so-and-so said, and then such and such said. And it's like, what are you doing to me? Okay, you asked me my opinion. What do I give? What do I give a rat's rear end? What so and so says and such says. Now, if what's his name said it, then I'd pay attention. Joe Rayo pays it. Joe Rayo's glued to what's his name on the radio. Who's what's his name, Joe?
No, I think, are you referring to when I was doing a radio station in Providence, Rhode Island back in the day? And every morning when the news director would call to get the recorded forecast, if we're in line for a potentially big storm, I would do my forecast and I would say, we're going to get 3 to 6 or 4 to 8 or whatever like that. As soon as I finish the recording, the news director would come back and say to me, he says, well, Copeland says, and Copeland was Bob Copeland, who did the weather on a Boston television station. And he was obviously making reference to what he had said, at the 11 o'clock report the previous night or whatever. And I finally got to the point where I told him, I said, John, the guy's name was John Carpilio. That was who the news director was. And I said, John, I don't give a blankety blank what Bob Copeland or the Frank Field of Boston, Don Kent, who was a legend up in Boston. I don't care what any of those guys say. I'm saying what I'm saying, and you can either accept it or you don't want to accept it, but that's it. I don't want to hear what anybody else is forecasting, or Elliot Abrams.
Well, the big storm we've been talking about for the past 46 millennia finally has developed, but it's 1,000 miles away. Joe.
You're doing it wrong. Well, the big storm that is now located up in the northern part of New York State and was supposed to dump a lot of snow over our area. Tom Grand. Tom is still around, right? He's still with us.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he is. He is.
God bless him.
I haven't spoken to him recently, but I know Ed Yandrich keeps in contact with him, and he still has his wits. He still has his wits.
God bless him. And landlords should continue to run in fear and make sure that when those Arctic air masses come down, that they keep the heat up under such extreme conditions. I have never forgotten that. Landlords are advised to keep heat up under such extreme conditions. What, they didn't have warming? We didn't have warming centers back in the 1970s when we had brutal air masses. Joe Rayo would have liked that. That's my Andrew Cuomo imitation. I love Tom Grant. Was great. I love, what a great guy.
Yes.
What a great guy.
Yes.
Such a kind man. He was always really not. He's not that anybody wasn't.
No.
Hey, I got along with Abe Zwicker.
wait a minute,
if I got along with Abe Zwicker.
Abe Zwicker.
Yeah, that's tough. That's
Yeah,
tough. That's tough to get along with him.
yeah, we got along very well. We really got to know each other very well over time, and he was always very kind to me. What do you got in there, Joe?
I have in here is all of the teletypes. This is from when I was working during the 1983 megalopolitan blizzard, and we had Ray Wark. Remember Ray Wark?
Oh,
that
yeah.
was when we used to get special weather statements from weather forecast centers all over the eastern part of the country. And on the night of the 83 blizzard, Ray Wark was running like 3 hours behind. But what I'm looking for, guys, I'm just you keep talking or whatever like that. I'm looking for a statement that Tom Grant put out. Apparently, the New York Post disparaged the National Weather Service and the way they forecasted the storm, and Tom Grant wrote a diatribe against the Post. He didn't mention the Post specifically, but I'm trying to see here. Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. This is your typical Tom Grant special weather statement. This is how he ended this long statement. It was a chronology of how the forecast went and how the NWS had forecasted. They said blizzards are very rare occurrence in New York City and are very difficult to predict. Even with all of our modern technology and tools, it still takes the final subjective and mature judgment of a person to make a critical decision to forecast such an event. At the time the snow is falling, these storms are extremely tricky and in many instances defy prediction. But we try very hard to do what is possible and stay on top of the best we can. Now, here it comes. You ready? The dedication of the National Weather Service, the People's Service, and the people who man the helm and stay through these storms and work through this night and day should not be tarnished by sloppy news reporting. This hurts not only the dedicated people involved, but also it does a disservice to the American people and its government service, which has had a great deal to be proud of through all of these days and months and years. Grant, NWS, FO, and NYC. I mean, there's your typical Tom Grant.
That's beautiful. That's just beautiful.
Bravo.
Shraggy Stern hitting super chat tonight. I know, Shraggy, you want this. You want to get at least a few inches up in Rockland County where you are, and I'm thinking, look, keep your fingers crossed that you get a front end thump, and maybe you'll put down some snow before you go over to sleet and rain. By the way, guys, I do have a poll up, okay, and the question on the poll is of Joe Rayo, Joe Chaffee, Bill Goodman, and Tony Gigi. With whom do you agree the most on with regards to this storm? So Bill Goodman, you are leading 37%. I'm second at 34%. Joe Rayo is third at 21%. And Tony, you're pulling up the rear there at 7%. It's that. Well, you know what? You're close. You're close to Atlantic City, and Atlantic City right now is leading. Mm-hmm. It's got more snow so far this season than a lot of places in the Northeast, per the Eastern Region's Post the other day. So I guess everybody's mad at you because you're living in snowland at the moment in South Jersey.
Okay. I golfed today. There's no snow left. I don't know. I don't know what's down in. Actually, you know what? The golf course near Atlantic City is actually open too. So they lost all the snow.
Oh, they did.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it got
the
up.
place in
It got up in the mid 40s down in South Jersey today.
and I think what really took a lot of the snow away too was the rain on Sunday.
On Sunday.
Yeah, because it was warm. You know, once you get the dew points above freezing, the snow just goes. It doesn't linger. It goes pretty quickly. So, yeah. So yeah, no, Atlantic City. I mean, they've had a really rough go of it in terms of getting snow down there in Delmarva. So, you know, good for them that the people that want to see snow down there. I mean, they've had a longer snow drought than places farther north and west.
Well, I can tell you by
Joe
the
Gaffney
way.
brings up a
Go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry,
Joe Gaffney on the chat board. Joe Gaffney just brought up a point which none of us have brought into play here with this impending system. We've got a full moon coming up this weekend, I believe. Full moon, coastal flooding, tides could be a factor, winds could be a factor. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Tides and winds. I mean, you know, once the snow disappears from the picture, people, you know, a lot of people just walk out of the room. But I mean, there's a lot of facets with this system. Yeah, the full moon. Yeah, pretty intense onshore flow for about a 6 to 12 hour period, and wind gusts. You know, 40 to 50. If the models are pretty close to intensity, I mean, that's a pretty decent differential between the low and the departing high. You know.
By the way, John Curry
Dennis
wants.
Cassia.
Go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry. Go
Dennis
ahead.
Cassia. Thank you, Dennis Cassia, the wise guy on the poll. He wants to know, Joe, where's none of the above?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I thought of putting that up there, but I didn't want. I also, it was a little risky. I just didn't want to take the chance. John Curry, let's put on our lake effect thinking hats here, and also the fact that the storm might track to the west. Yeah, first of all, thank you, John, for hitting the super chat tip jar. Also, thank you, David Fuller, for hitting the super chat tip jar tonight as you wait for something in Monmouth County that I don't know how much you're going to wind up with. But can Johnstown, Pennsylvania wind up with more than a foot? Well, you're going to be on the west side of this. So I would imagine that you should do okay. Now, whether you get a foot or not remains to, that's a different story. But I would think that you're also going to get into some lake effect after the low goes by. When from what I gave it a quick look before, so you might have some decent snowfall going on over the next several days once this storm passes. Again, my never to be humble opinion. Which is neither never nor humble, by the way.
Have we finally run out of things to say?
Yeah,
is that what?
Bill, you said you wanted me to look at the Rayobs on tropical tidbits. Where exactly are they on tropical tidbits?
I don't know. I just someone at the office happened to mention that when I was when I called in earlier for something else, and I thought,
let's see.
I didn't get a chance to look at them. It was right before we got on the air.
Are you talking about forecast Rayobs or like actual like sounding?
No, the actual drop zones that were done in the Northeast Pacific for ahead of all these.
Yeah, I'm not sure where to find them on here.
Things started to settle down.
Satellite imagery, ocean analysis, surface analysis. Yeah, I'm not sure where to pull where it would be on tropical tidbits. I'd have to dig around on when I've got some downtime. Oh, there we go. Let me get us back up on the screen. Get the Brady Bunch boys back on the screen here. So, any final thoughts as we come up on 8:45? We've gone an hour and 15 minutes, and no one has yelled rap yet. So we're not in television anymore when you don't have a producer and a director and an executive producer screaming at you to rap. So any final thoughts? We'll start with Mr. Goodman.
All right. Final thoughts. I think unless there's like some major shift in with what happens, especially with the offshore storm that we have what going on Friday, with how it affects the upstream pattern. I think that I think we're I think we have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen. Now, I guess we'll just have to watch that. And, if this thing were even if the low track were just to shift even a little bit farther south and east, that means more snow for everybody, I would think.
Okay.
So,
also, while you're there, Tom Contino's asking, what are rayobs? Can you explain those?
Oh, just the weather. Well, twice a day we do weather balloon launches, all at sites all around the U.S., all around the globe. So that's the weather balloon observations. We do those. What's being done in the North Pacific are dropsondes. That's instead of launching these from balloons, drop them out of airplanes and sampling temperature, humidity, wind, pressure, and all that stuff ends up in the numerical weather prediction models.
By the way, Johnny Quest, who's in the mountains of Western Virginia, 3,500 feet up. I think you're going to do quite well where you are in terms of snow. Yeah. It's not impossible. I saw at least with the GFS that it brings a warm layer fairly close to you, but even if that happens, it should be for a short period of time. By the way, Timothy Veltman, thank you for telling me this. I did find it's actually Bill. It's under the aircraft recon, because you mentioned that they had an aircraft recon out there. I actually have it here from Levi Cowan's wonderful site, Tropical Tidbits. This is one. Plane is en route. He's at 38.5 and 127.5. The bearing is 135 degrees at 305 knots. Okay. Peaks 10-second wind, 87 knots at 208 degrees. Altitude, he's at 99.7 GPM.
Look at that.
I'm just trying to, he's got this is the flight off the coast of, see if I can get this to come up on the screen here. But you can see the wind observations off the coast of Northern California, Washington, and Oregon. It's 64 to 83 knots, running all the way northwest. Boy, he's got a lot. I can't even see with the wind barbs what directions. They look like northerly winds over here on that side, or northwest winds. There must be some kind of low center there between there and the Washington coast. So there you have it. I mean, there's a plane there right now that's checking all this out.
There we go.
I'm so used to seeing this kind of stuff in the summer for hurricanes. It's kind of weird for me to look at this now in January and see this.
Yeah, there's a drop zone here. Let me see if it's a little hard to figure though. Hang on. I'll just bring it up. By the way, the chairman, Scott Briller, hitting super chat tonight. Thank you for the kind words. He's listening to the show tonight in his pocket. What was the most snow each of us ever forecasted for one storm? Good question. I would say, well, I mean, there was a few of them in the stretch in the 20 years from 2000 to 2020, but in all those years that we had a lot of, the years that we did get a lot of snow, I can remember just sort of reflexively going 18 to 24 for a number of them, particularly for Long Island. So I would say, it's probably the most I ever. It's certainly the blizzard of '96 when I went 18 to 24, and that was probably among the highest. I don't think I ever went higher than that. Maybe I did something, one of them where I put a 24-inch plus, maybe the Boxing Day storm or something, but definitely I remember 18 to 24.
Yeah, I remember February 2010, I think it was. This was a storm that, at least out on Long Island, we had mostly rain. It was almost like the blizzard of '88, except shifted a little bit west in terms of what happened with snowfall. And for that one, I think up Orange County way predicted 30 inches. That's the most I've ever gone. And that one, when the cold air did get to Long Island, we ended up with 5 or 6.
Yeah. That was,
But
yeah.
with me, I was doing syndicated forecasts in over 200 radio markets for a private weather company out in Queens, and one of our clients was WRHP, which stood for Roy H. Park, who owned a radio station. He eventually ended up owning WPAT, the elevator music station in Paterson, New Jersey. But he also owned a station up in Syracuse, New York, WRHP. That was his flagship. And I remember I did a forecast simply using the Ussolini Paul Cosin book because it looked to me like as an analog, it looked like something like the blizzard of '65, which dumped something like 35 inches of snow in Syracuse. So I didn't even, I took a quick look at a lot of the models, but I simply went on the air that morning and I said, you know, big storm coming tonight, tomorrow, heavy snow, blowing snow, blah, 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 blah. Accumulations 2 to 4 feet. and believe it or not, it worked. That forecast was amazingly accurate. But of course, you can get away with something like that up in the Syracuse, also in the Binghamton area. I've done forecasts for Horseheads, New York, which is not far from Elmira and Binghamton, and of course Buffalo, Rochester. I used to do Rochester. I used to do WHAM, which you can hear from here in New York after sunset. 50,000 watt flamethrower, and I remember many times, you know, saying, you know, 1 to 2 feet in Sodas Bay on lake effect snows or whatever. That's a pretty wild area to forecast up in Western New York.
You know, I've said it many times, Joe. It's my dream to take the drive up there with a lawn chair and a parka and a pair of gloves and a hat, and just put the chair and face it toward the lake and let the lake effect go. You know, get a room at a Motel 6, hopefully on a second floor, and then just make sure and then just pray it doesn't go above the first floor.
Yes. Make sure when you get that room, you have it for a week, because after the storm, it's going to take the better part of the week to clear away that snow.
Parting thoughts, Tony Gigi.
Oh, by the way, I think I found it. Glad I was going last, because I was working the morning before the snow just started with 96, and IM Cal is great for this stuff. Blizzard warning in effect through tonight, around 2 feet of snow possible for Philadelphia. So that was my final answer before of course I was sure I was low because Philly had the 30 inches. So there you go. You forecast 24 inches and you're a little low.
And I'm sure somebody pointed that out to you. You said, that I always love. It's like, how much upside do you want? You know, oh, you forecasted 12, I got 18. What do you want me to do? Mm-hmm. You know, okay. Mm-hmm. I think when you forecast, to me, in my mind, it's always been there's a certain number in terms of when you start to deal with these bigger storms that, you know, you put out that number, it's kind of understood that if that's your minimum, it could go higher. You know, I've never been good at picking out a top numbers, but, you know, if somebody says a foot or more and you wind up with 18 or 19 and you're complaining because I didn't give you an exact snowflake count, I despise more than I despise forecast shoppers. I despise zip code forecasting. When people call up and they want to know how much snow is going to fall on their mailbox to the side of their driveway to the left of the awning and where the dog pees on a regular basis. Okay.
But Joe, getting back to your question, I guess, you know, I mean, it's still 4 days away, but I mean, just in general, I mean, you assume that the 500 millibar is going to be more correct, and it's closing and it's going negative tilt west of us, which is never a good sign. That the better potential would be if this ocean storm would slow down a little bit, or this new system comes in a little bit faster, so it gives you more in the front end.
Okay, I think those are certainly valid. Those are certainly valid. Kind of interesting with the ocean storm was the fact that it was a week ago last Friday that it first appeared, and it gave like these 1 to 2 feet snow amounts for coastal New Jersey, Long Island, and, you know, basically buried all of New England. And then it just kind of whipped back and forth out between 65, taking it all the way out to 65. And now it's come back to where it's actually going to graze, might graze Cape Cod with a little bit of rain. And there might even be rain offshore on the radar when it goes by here Thursday night and Friday morning. So, yeah, you know what? Not impossible what you say. And I will tell you this. I think the fact that I threw in the towel early pretty much guarantees that there will be at least one or two runs that are going to make me sweat. Okay, because that happened 2 weeks ago.
Usually,
I was going to say that happened to me 2 weeks ago. I was insistent that the storm, that wound up going through, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, and ultimately getting up into southern New Jersey would never get up here. And then I had to sweat for 2.5 days because the global models were pushing, snow amounts of 6 inches plus to Long Island and up to about New York City. And it was like, no, I can't. This cannot happen. This cannot happen. It was tough.
Well, that was actually pretty well done, Joe, by the NAM and other mesoscale models about showing all that dry air. It's like the globals just wanted to snow through all the dry air, Joe
Rayo did a fantastic job pointing out all that dry air the day before. Of course, he was undone about 4 days later with the second storm that followed up. But we've all been down that road.
Oh dear.
I wasn't going to let you get
Joe,
away with that.
somebody wants to know, Joe, somebody on the chat board, I forgot who it was or whatever, said, are you planning to put out a preliminary snow map, a first guess snow map for tomorrow? Or by tomorrow?
Snow maps in my book of rules, snow maps do not appear until 72 hours before the first flakes are going to fall. So if it's not going to fall until late Sunday, then you might see an early call snow forecast map sometime tomorrow evening, or I may push it and wait till Friday morning if I'm in a bit of a state of confusion. And of course, those snow maps will be available on my subscription platform, which you can find at patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Always an opportunity for a shameless self-promotion.
Joe, I think I'll wait to put my snow map out until Tuesday.
Yes.
Many have advised us to do that over the years, I would say. Well, look, I just want to say, as always, and actually tonight, technically, it really went well tonight. No big audio issues, no big video issues. Everybody's gotten on, once we got through the first few minutes to get everybody here, it worked well. I can't tell you how much fun it is for me to do a show like this with you guys, with you, Bill, with you, Tony. You and I go back to high school, Tony.
Yes. We don't want to say how many years.
No, we don't. and I have 1 year up on you. So, but and of course with my colleague Joe Rayo, we're here every day. And I always say this at the end of the show, whenever you're on, you have an open invitation to come on whenever you like. So if you see something you want to talk about, whatever it is, or when weather gets like this, when we have a storm to talk about, you're always welcome. By the way, it just reminded me, there was one thing, just to go on a news thing, and I'm not trying to start any trouble on this particular subject, but it just kind of annoyed me. I saw an article, and this has to do with climate change and global warming, but it really has more to do with the fact of Joe Rayo, what you pointed out, what Tom Grant said about horrible reporting. And I'll just preface this by saying that however you fall on this, this whole global warming conversation on whichever side, I think both sides should be appalled by this, what I read, and it was this. There was an article that popped up on Google. I forgot what news source it was, but it was in a reputable news source. And the premise of the article was that by the end of this century, snows in the West were going to disappear. And when you read the story, it was based solely on one fact, okay, on one fact, and that fact was that Denver had its latest starting winter season on record, okay? Just on that one fact. I'm reading through this article and trying to say, okay, where's the data? What kind of data are you looking at? But just on that, writes a whole story about how all the snows are going to disappear in the West. And I immediately thought, well, how come 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, when Denver not only had its earliest accumulating snow, but had its earliest 1 foot at the end of September. So how come you didn't write an article that said exactly the opposite? I mean, I'm sorry to bring it up because I actually completely forgot about it until a couple of minutes ago. And of course, let's also ignore the fact that we just watched during the month of December record snows up and down the West Coast. I mean, anyway, I just put that out there just to say, folks, when you read stuff like that, really just be careful what you're reading because, a lot of it is just crap. And in this particular case, this was really, really bad crap. Okay. And as I said, whatever side of the argument you're on, of the conversation you're on, I don't want to call it an argument, but whatever side of the conversation you're on, you always want to, you want your facts, you want to have your data, and you want to have your stuff that supports what you say. And you want to make sure it's clean data and it makes sense. So anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say. Who's sharing a screen here?
Me.
What are you doing?
My sister is watching with my mom from my mother's apartment on her smart TV, and she just took a picture of the screen and wanted me to share it with all of you.
Oh, very good.
That's what.
Nice.
So that you say, Joe, when I said this, I was the one who said this. Gee, we're not on television anymore. Yeah, we are on television. People can watch us on our televisions, and not only is there you and I, but we also have Tony and Bill up there with us. So there you go.
We're on the #1 channel in the world, YouTube. Always remember that.
Yes.
We're not on CBS, the Can't Be Serious network. We're not on NBC. we're not on NBC, the Nothing But Crap network. And we're not on ABC, the Always Bad and Confusing network. Although I must say that David Muir must have more black jackets than anybody I know. If you ever watched ABC evening, their evening news, it's the same black jacket that's closed down in the middle. He must have like 50 of them. Anyway, I just had to put that out there. Final thoughts, Mr. Rayo, before we wind this up and wind up.
No, I had a great session tonight. We had 237 likes. I think at one point we had close to 400 people watching tonight, and it's only going to get more fun, I think, as we get closer to this thing on. And I'm trying to think of an adjective to describe Sunday and Monday. Unfortunately, I just realized that we're on a family show, so I won't say it out loud.
Oh, go on, say it.
No,
say it. No,
no. It's like the old time television where they showed you the seal of good practice, standards and practices. Where you weren't able to do certain things. We still have the seal of good practice, if not the AMS and NWA seals as well. Oh.
Rich Rothmansky calls NBC the Nobody Cares Network. When I worked at NBC, the running joke was that the only difference between NBC and the Titanic, this was in the early 80s, the only when they were at the bottom of the ratings pile, that the only difference between NBC and the Titanic was that the Titanic had entertainment. I always loved that line. I really did. Well, look, you guys, as I said, are welcome. If it winds up that I have to unthrow the towel, okay, and have to come back and basically swallow this, we can certainly, come back on Friday or over the weekend, or even on Sunday, if you like to, join us on Sunday, Sunday morning, if you're not busy, right before everything gets underway. That would be terrific. So I'll stay in touch with both you for Bill and Tony. Bill, are you working tonight?
No, I'm done. Thank God. That's I had a first run of mids in weeks, and yeah, they didn't get any better. Let's put it that way.
All right. Well, thanks everybody
I
for.
feel your pain.
Everybody, just stay on while I say Joe and I say goodbye. Thanks everybody for being here. Wonderful crowd. 242 likes. Thank you very much for liking the show. Thanks for all the those of you who have hit the super chat tip jar. It is very much appreciated, and certainly Joe and I want to give big thank yous for that. I'm sorry, I just lost everybody on the screen because I accidentally hit the wrong button. So let me bring everybody back on the screen. So we will be back, Joe, you and I tomorrow night. Who knows? Maybe we could dig up a few other guests along the way. We'll have to check around the old professional listings to see if anybody wants to come on. But if not, it'll just be the two of us. We'll be here at 7:30 Eastern time, and then of course we'll gonna have to play it by ear as far as Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Well, certainly Sunday will be on at 11 a.m. So that's it. Oh, the poll, by the way. Bill, you and I are tied at 35%. 21% for Mr. Rayo and 9% for Tony. You have the lowest number though, but that's good because you play golf, and in golf you want to have the lowest number.
That's it. Well, low scores work somewhere.
That's right. All right, guys. Thanks again for being here. Thank you, everybody watching, for being here tonight, and we will see you tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern. Nighty night.
Good night.
Nighty
Good
night.
night.
Good night.